is to get a right concept of God, to understand what the yogis call God. Because understanding it properly leads a person to freedom. They may be a religious person, they may be an atheist, it doesn't matter who they are. If they have a right understanding of the nature of reality, they will be moving towards freedom. If they don't, they will be unconsciously moving towards bondage, even though they think they are moving towards happiness and freedom. But this is that. Because there will be, in Vedanta there is the analogy, there will be like a person trying to quench their thirst from the mirage water. Okay? If we think that the mirage is real, then unavoidably we will be trying to quench our thirst with a mirage water. The only thing that will be the result is our mouth will be full of sand. You see? We are not going to feel appeased, rather we are going to choke. Okay? We think we are quenching our thirst, or at least we are trying to, not understanding why we can't. This is what the yogis are teaching. Okay? So this is what it means to worship the false god. False god means you are trying to worship something which will entangle you as if it will liberate you. Why? Wrong understanding. That's all. Okay, so then we continue. So the next question is there a God? Swami Sivananda writes, God is beyond human imagination, meaning the mind cannot conceptualize it. Why? It is the very source of the mind. If the mind is relaxed, if the mind stills, if the mind moves to its source, the mind is God. So the yogis teach the mind moving outwards on account of desires and attachments becomes the world. Meaning when the mind moves outwards towards the objects due to desires and attachments, the world seems real. That's the meaning. Okay, so the more the mind is filled with desires and attachments, this world looks like a huge shopping mall. It's very, very real. All you need to do is to go and grab as many things as you can before your time is expired. Okay? This is when the mind is externalizing. The more it externalizes, the more the world appears real. Not because it's real, because whatever you give your mind to will seem real to you. That's how it is, right? Think about a person that, you know, they are going, let's say, to study business degree, you know, business management, etc. And, you know, prior to that, this is like a high school person or something. They have no clue. The only thing that they know about money is petty cash, right? They get some money, they go, you know, they work as whatever, they get some money, that's all they know. Suddenly they learn all about financial systems, right? Suddenly the financial systems of the world are the reality for them. They all the time think within these concepts. You understand? So these are concepts. Concepts appear real when we give our mind to them. You understand? It depends how much you give your mind to something. According to that, it will seem real to you. This is what the yogis teach us. What happens if you steal your mind from all conceptual thinking? You will abide in the reality, which is your own self. So, therefore, the yogis teach, the mind moving outwards becomes the world, the mind moving inwards becomes the self. So it all depends where our mind is going. If our mind is grabbed by the world will be extremely real to us. Okay? If the mind is stilled and moving within, then naturally it will abide in the source. Naturally, like a lake in which the bottom of the lake is visible. If the mind is entangled in the world, there is no way it can attain peace. See? We need to understand something. If the world is real, there is no peace. Look at the world. Can you have peace in such a world? There's no way. See? So Swami Sivananda says, remove the world out of your mind. You will attain peace. The meaning is that you need to behold the world in its true nature, which is God. Only then you can attain peace. If we have a wrong relationship with the world, then there is no peace. Therefore, he says, forget about the world will be peaceful. Take care of yourself, the world will be peaceful. Okay? So, he doesn't say it from a selfish point. Swami Shivananda he benefited billions of people. So the meaning is that we can benefit humanity if we have a proper understanding of what the world is. If we don't, then this world process, which the yogis call Maya, will just swallow and destroy us. You see, we will not have any capacity to help anyone because we become part of the problem. So he says, God is beyond human imagination, but is a living reality. So he says, don't think that God is a philosophical thing. See? God is not a philosophy. God is not a concept. If we know the knower, the I am, this is God. I am that I am. Okay? So all we need to know is who is the one that is knowing. We think that the mind is knowing. At the same time, we have a clue. I am aware of the mind. How can it be? If the mind is the origin of awareness, how can I be aware of the mind? So this clue is very important. It means that the light of the mind is like the light of the moon. It's a reflection. Where is the sun? Okay? So you are the sun because you are aware of the mind. But who is that you? The yogis say if you know who is shining on the mind, you will know God, you will be free. Then he says, Brahman is no metaphysical abstraction. It is the fullest and the most real being. Swami Shivananda says, don't think Brahman or God is an abstraction. It's convenient to make of God an abstraction because then you don't need to deal with it. God is an abstraction. It's somewhere. Where is God? In the Bible. As long as you keep the Bible closed, you are okay. You see? So that's not God. See, Swami Shivananda says, don't think that this is a philosophical thing. This is understanding the nature of reality to remove suffering. That's all. See, yoga and Vedanta are purely practical philosophies. They are not interested at all in what Swami Shivananda calls intellectual gymnastics. Yogis are not interested in this, in discussions, and is it like this, is it like that. Yogis will tell you just sit and do pranayama. Because the reason is that these philosophies are just to guide our mind into the right place and attain practical freedom. See, yoga is not an academic science. It's a science of reality. It's a science of freedom. It's a science of happiness. Yogis are interested only in one thing, in real freedom. That's all. wrong understanding of happiness and freedom, or wrong understanding of reality, will definitely make us entangled in the world. We will suffer. That's what it means. If we have a correct understanding of reality, of freedom and happiness, it will be a struggle, but we will be moving towards the real happiness. This is the meaning. So then he says, the existence of God cannot be proved by scientific experimentation. The absolute baffles the mind of even the greatest scholar. It eludes the grasp of even the mightiest intellect. It is experienced as pure consciousness, where intellect dies, scholarship perishes, and the entire being itself is completely lost in it. All is lost and all is found. Okay, so what Samishanda says, you see, intellect is extremely important in the yogic and Vedantic practices, because the intellect is the vehicle by which we can begin to think correctly. The Samishanda teaches that spiritual realizations have to do with right knowledge. Right knowledge has to do with a clear intellect. The intellect has lots of wrong understanding in it. All sorts of problems in vision are created in the intellect because of all sorts of things. So it causes our mind to fundamentally think wrongly about things. And so the intellect is extremely important, but, Swami Sivananda says, the realization of the self is where intellect dies. Okay? So the meaning is, he says, God cannot be intellectualized. See, the intellectual analysis of God is very important, but God is not an intellectual object. Therefore, the yogis say, we must couple intellectual analysis with devotion, with bhakti. So the intellect that can appreciate the reality of God is not a dry intellect. It's an intellect which is becoming very, very deep because of devotion, because of love. So this intellect coupled with devotion is what is able to appreciate the reality of God. Then he says, you want laboratory proofs? Very fine indeed. You wish to limit the illimitable, all-pervading God in your test tube, blowpipe, and chemicals? God is the source of your chemicals. He is the substratum of your atoms, electrons, and molecules. Without him, no atom or electron will move. He is the inner ruler. So the will of God governs everything. So Samishanda says, without the will of God, no atom will move. Nothing will happen. It's all the presence of God. This is the idea. Lord Jesus says it very beautifully. He says, you cannot turn one hair on your head gray, but the number of hairs on your head are numbered. Okay, so the divine will is so infinite, it's so precise, that even something as trivial as the number of hairs on your head is accounted for. Okay? The divine will is so perfect and infinite. But what is your will? You cannot turn one of those hair gray even. Okay? This is the difference between the individual will and the divine will. The divine will is infinite. No atom will move without it. No thought will rise in the mind without the will of God. No emotion will rise in the mind without the will of God. Nothing will happen without the will of God. This is the idea. No hair will grow. We are not growing our hair. Okay? No one is growing their hair. Hair grows in the presence of God. This is the idea.